Jalen Hurts showed on Friday that he is an elite quarterback with a turnover problem, but he is not a regressing quarterback. We'll tell you why coming up on this Monday edition of Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. I'm Louis DiBiase, joined as always by my co-host Gino Camilleri. It's a Monday edition of the show. We continue to recap the Eagles' 34-29 win Week 1 in Brazil over the Green Bay Packers. Got some Jalen Hurts talk for you and the return of Stock Up, Stock Down. We're brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the code, which is in all lowercases, LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. So yeah, 34-29, a shootout back and forth game in Brazil. What a way to kick off the season. The offense showed, Gino, their ceiling. And I think that was something very apparent with just the back and forth nature of it. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley, they all put up crazy numbers. But at the same time, Jalen Hurts did throw two really bad interceptions. I went back and watched some of the All-22 today. Thought he could have had two more picks. There was one that was almost a pick six on a Dotson screen where he got lucky. And so that is a huge thing that he needs to fix. But at the same time, when you look at some of the ball placement throws that he made inside the pocket, like Jalen Hurts is still, to me, an elite quarterback that has an actual real problem that needs to be corrected. But to me, the turnovers still are not a Carson Wentz-like, Jameis Winston-like sign of a significant regression. Like, this is not even the end of last year Jalen Hurts, what I saw on Friday. Like, yeah, those plays cannot happen, but at the same time, like, I thought he was spectacular for 90% of that game.
When this offense gets into a rhythm, and it's been pretty consistent over the last couple years, they can really hum. Like, when things are in tune, everybody's going together, it really looks like an orchestra is being conducted out there. But when they're bad, Lou, it looks like a team that had never played football together.
Yes.
And it starts from Jalen Hurts, right? But the thing about Jalen that we keep saying is this ability to keep the avalanche from rolling down the hill. There was a statistic put out today. It's a nice little graphic of EPA per dropback from True Media.
I saw that.
Of all quarterbacks from Week 1 outside of Monday Night Football. Baker Mayfield was number 1, Josh Allen number 2, Pat Mahomes number 3. Do you know who number 4 was, Lou?
Yeah, it was Jalen Hurts. By the way, Gino, that's not the only impressive stat from Friday. He had the second most yards for a quarterback passing this week. He had the highest passer rating against the blitz. He went 6 for 7 for 91 yards and a touchdown. There was that anonymous defensive coach that just said a couple weeks ago that, like, the jury's out on Jalen Hurts. Like, you blitz him, he's broken. Well, Week 1, he showed that's not true. And he also had the 5th best passer rating inside the pocket. And Green Bay wasn't letting him outside the pocket, doing what he does best, and he still made them pay. So again, it's not black and white where the turnovers are showing the Eagles have a Jalen Hurts problem, but at the same time, it is a real issue that could cost them games. And Jalen Hurts in the past normally was someone that could carry you to victories, but you were never losing because of Jalen Hurts. And if he makes throws like he did on Friday, like, yeah, you can lose games that way because of your quarterback.
If you were able to sit down and watch the games on Sunday, and I know you saw this, Lou, Josh Allen, first quarter of the game, strip sack, turns the ball over, and you're thinking, well, this guy's going to make plays and come back and win the game for them. And that's the Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, heck, like Anthony Richardson, like freak type of winner mold where you just let those guys go out there and make plays and you have to live and die by it. The Brett Favre type of effect, but Jalen Hurts in his own right has to know. And I said this on the show the other day, put that tape on, the good and the bad, and then you throw it back to Carson Wentz and you say, do you want to be this guy? Do you want everything to tumble downhill for it to get out of control? Or do you want to manage this problem? Because it does look teachable, Lou. That ball throwing across his body, you'd never do that again. That's something you can never do. Backed up in your own end zone, you got to know that you don't make that throw. But it was week 1 in a tough environment on the road, and he's still putting up good numbers. Take away those 2 interceptions. They scored 34 points cumulatively. If they can hit their ceiling 4 quarters, which they never got to do last year, which they did in spurts in 2022, we have said for years, Lou, 35 points, a great offense in the NFL. That's where you need to be. Jalen Hurts brought his offense to 34 points
against a really good secondary.
And against
that's a good team.
Probably see in the playoffs if Jordan Love, who thank goodness he's only out 3 to 6 weeks, that's a really good Green Bay team that a lot of people expect big things out of this year.
And, Gino, like you said, I think sometimes with this style of player that's mobile, that likes to take shots, you have to live with the over-aggression. You want your quarterback to make plays like this, like Josh Allen does, and Anthony Richardson, Jalen Hurts. And I think a lot of the time that is what's happening is Jalen's just trying to give his elite weapons opportunities to make plays, which I do love. But you can't just live and die with that in a vacuum, black and white. He does need to pick and choose his spots
100%.
a lot better. Like, I can live with the interceptions I saw in the first half of 2023 with Hurts. A lot of those times I'm like, yeah, I like that look, take that chance.
Mm-hmm.
But those were not the interceptions on Friday. Those are throws that just cannot happen. And again, one of them was because he was being over aggressive. The one was because he just did not see the safety crashing in on Devontae Smith. He thought he had a one-on-one with a linebacker. So some of it was vision. And again, when you're Jalen Hurts, you don't have a Jalen or a Josh Allen arm. You can't throw it across your body back towards the middle of the end zone and beat that safety and corner there. Like, he's not that guy.
Yeah.
So Jalen needs to pick and choose his spots. And that's the one thing on Friday that he definitely has to nip in the butt early on now before that does snowball.
It's such a fine-edged sword because, like, you want him to stay aggressive. But
I don't want him to check down and not be aggressive.
No, that's exactly the world that you can't live in. But there's a relative land that you can live in.
Yeah, those were obvious plays of when to not be aggressive, right?
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
And the structure of this offense, it's going to provide him opportunities, to make plays if he just patient and confident and sits in the pocket and is the 4th best EPA drop back passer in the NFL. Lou, it's almost to the point where you're like, dude, just don't escape the pocket. Like, just learn to maneuver, step up.
Isn't that crazy considering Jalen Hurts a few years ago, everybody said keep him in the pocket and you'll beat him. And now you can't do that. He did not run the ball very well on Friday. He couldn't get his footing because of the grass. Green Bay did a really good job removing the RPOs from this offense. The Eagles stunk with RPOs on Friday. It did not matter. Like, he, again, outside of those 2 picks, was picking them apart inside the pocket. That touchdown still to Saquon Barkley, I can't stop watching it. That ball it's like he walked over and put it right in his chest. And the A.J. Brown touchdown, he held the safety with his eyes right in the middle of the field so Brown could beat Alexander one-on-one. Another rainbow pass. Like, Jalen did have, for 90% of that game, a spectacular throwing performance.
Both of those throws that you just mentioned, according to Next Gen Stats, fell within the top 10 most improbable completions of the week.
Stat. Let's go.
So you're talking about a guy who is still making plays, Lou.
Exactly.
And to the Josh Allen point, like, does he have that arm? No, but he still can make those plays where when he needs to run and pick up a first down by carrying 2 guys on his back, he can absolutely do that. And there is that level of superhero that you need. But the Hulk, the Bruce Banner, it's such a... It's a seesaw. It's a teeter-totter. Like, you have to.
And he's had that balance in the past. We know he's not like Josh Allen has always been this way, right? Since Wyoming. He started radically as a wild card and then got closer towards the middle. Jalen, though, we know is more cautious and can take better care of the football. So that's why I'm feeling optimistic, is this has not always been the Jalen Hurts we've seen. It's really only been the last, year and a half.
And to continue on with the Carson Wentz comparison, which I think it's just pretty easy because they don't mirror each other. I think they mirror each other in opposite
on
ways.
This podcast.
We just absolutely destroy this guy now. But with the Wentz situation, he couldn't do things in the pocket or off platform. He was just shooting the offense in the foot every single week.
If 2020 Wentz would have been also making some of the plays that Jalen did and had the turnovers, then that's you kind of live with that, but you can't live with it when that's all you're getting.
That's why you lived with 2019, because it's like, this guy can still make plays for you. But that's the one thing about Jalen, that ever since his first year as a starter, keeping the Avalanche from snowballing down the mountain and still making enough plays to win because of, like, Lou, if Kenny Pickett's in that game, you don't win that game. Like, Jalen Hurts is not all of a sudden a bad quarterback. He still played good football.
It was a shootout with a great NFC team. That's the thing, is there were some negatives in that football game, but I think we're overlooking what a big win that was to go on the road, a new continent, for this football team to play in, right? I mean, they've never been that far together. They're rusty. They didn't play all preseason. Considering how bad they looked last year, that isn't just some small week 1 victory against the Jacksonville Jaguars or the Washington Commanders. Like, that's a huge start to this season. That should not go overlooked.
And for the most part, look around the league. A majority of the league did not look great for 60 minutes.
Yeah, week one's weird too. Everybody's got to remember, week 1 is very strange.
It never plays out the way that you think. Teams that are going to win big, some of them lose.
Even 2022, Gino, we didn't feel great about that win in Detroit.
I don't think you felt great about the win last year against New England.
Yeah,
you didn't feel good.
You never have.
that win against Detroit. You didn't feel good back against Jacksonville.
Right,
I mean, outside of that Cleveland Browns game with Carson Wentz's first season, it's never been good week 1. And if this is the floor and they just continue to get better, and Jalen Hurts, the schedule, it's going to open up a little bit, man. Like, you're not going to play a top NFC contender every single week. You're going to go 3 straight weeks against the NFC South, which, if you look at things, might not be the best division in all of football. If those opportunities come up in those games, Lou, where he is turning the ball over and making boneheaded decisions, well, what's going to happen when you get back on this schedule where you are playing the top teams in the NFC and you have to go play against the AFC North, where all of those teams are pretty darn good? I mean, outside of Pittsburgh and Cleveland, who just doesn't have a quarterback, but it's going to be competitive, and you can't put your team in that situation because the quarterback, as good as they are, the weight of each of their plays is 10x of anybody else on the football field.
I totally agree, but I thought there were a lot more wins on Friday than losses, including for Jalen Hurts. Stock up, stock down, coming your way. We'll start with stock up right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast.
As we roll along, this episode of LOE is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Want to play Prize Picks alongside Drewski, Joe Budden, and MMA champ Sugar Sean O'Malley? Well, now you can over at the Community Plays tab under the Promos tab on the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each and every week. Heck, if you rolled with the Philadelphia Eagles and said they were going to go more in terms of passing yards from Jalen Hurts, receiving yards from A.J. Brown, touchdowns from Saquon Barkley, well over at Prize Picks, you would have done a pretty good job. So today, download the Prize Picks app and use the code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game.
Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is also sponsored by BetterHelp. What's something you'd love to learn? As an adult, do you still make time to learn new things as often as you'd like, or was that lost in your childhood? Kids are always learning and growing, but as adults, sometimes we do lose that curiosity. What's something you'd like to learn? Gardening, a new language, an instrument, maybe finally time to beat your best friend in bowling? Therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder because your back-to-school era can come at any age. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. So just fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/LockedOn. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Guys, make sure the new Locked On NFL is your second listen. It's 2 shows every day now. First, you got the madman Tyler Rowland kicking things off in the morning with a double shot of NFL Espresso, and then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Add in the Locked On local experts, and you get unprecedented NFL insight, hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all in just 30 minutes. It's the new Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. Make the madman Tyler Rowland and the barber Tony Wiggins your second listen at the new Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. It's time now for Stock Up after a 34 Stock Up, Stock Down after a 34-29 win over the Green Bay Packers. And Gino, I want to start with a guy that did not play on Friday. He did not coach, but he put this team together. And I know Nick Sirianni says he picked the coordinators. I think this guy had heavy influence in these decisions. Stock up to the general manager, to Howie Roseman, because the coordinators were a main reason that you won that game. All of his free agent signings were a key reason you won that game. His first-round pick that he finally switched his philosophy for to get Quinyon Mitchell was a main reason you won that game. I mean, Mekhi Becton didn't allow a single pressure. Zach Bond's got 15 tackles and 2 sacks in that matchup. Quinyon's just locking down one side of the field. It was a phenomenal day for Howie and the moves that he needed to make this offseason to correct what happened last year. And I think so far, so good. Stock up to Howie.
Let's take a step back to that opener of last year. It was pretty evident that you did not have the guys in the middle of the field. Exactly. You did not have the guys that could cover on the back end. You might have been missing a little bit of that explosiveness in the run game that you didn't have. Well, what do? You go out there and get Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley has 3 touchdowns on the season. You know how many the Giants have right now, Lou? Not a single one. Saquon Barkley, $12 million investment, well worth it. Zach Bond, a guy that was an edge rusher, somebody that was playing out of position for the Saints. He goes out there and has 15 tackles, 2 sacks. Somebody said on Twitter that he looks like a Fred Warner light. I wouldn't go that far, but the ability to use him in multiple different areas, it fits Vic Fangio's scheme, as well as those guys that they've drafted on the inside, and then the guys on the back end.
Oh, and my bad. I didn't even say Saquon Barkley. How the hell did I miss the best player on the field that night?
The MVP. I mean, even Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, the energy that he brings, and Quinyon Mitchell, his ability to play man on the opposite side of Darius Slay, everything seemed to work. Outside of the edge rushers, which you can take the field into consideration, and if you go back and watch the All-22, I thought Bryce Huff in his moments made some really good hustle plays. There's one when he's on the backside of run play and he chases this thing down about 25 yards downfield. Those are the little plays you got to look for that don't show up in the box score. But if you look at the guys in the box score, Lou, Howie Roseman, take a bow, my friend. Like, he had to be sitting back there and snickering all day long.
And I love it because he's not normally that signs running backs. He's not somebody that normally drafts corners in the first round, but he's open-minded, and it's paying off for the Eagles already. I mean, Quinyon Mitchell and Saquon Barkley were 2 huge reasons that you won that football game. So stock up to Howie Roseman, the general manager of the Philadelphia Eagles. Gino, your first stock up.
Somebody that did not play, but they called the plays.
And you felt it too, man.
Didn't think I could fall in love with an idea as fast as I did when I saw it executed. Kellen Moore and this motion-based offense, it is so beautiful just to see it in motion. When you just see defenses a step slow to react because they truly don't know what is going on with the offensive formation. And not just that, Lou, not just the pre-snap motion and just the creativity. What he did with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, listen to this. This is from Jeff Kerr over at CBS Sports. In 2022 to 2023, A.J. Brown spent 27.4% of his snaps in the slot, and Devontae spent 22.9% in the slot in that time period. Kellen Moore in one game, Devontae Smith spent 54.1% of his snaps in the slot, Brown 36.6. So it's not just the motion and moving guys around. It's the ability to play to the strengths of his wide receivers. And hey, you got 2 guys that are top tier guys in this league. And do you think he used them to the best of their abilities and added in the role players and knew exactly what to do with Saquon Barkley and played to the strengths of Jalen Hurts? Kellen Moore, take a bow, man. to come into that game, Lou, and know how big of a talking point and like a misstep the blitz game was, and not having those reads to combat it last year. And for them to go 6 of 7 against the blitz,
Yeah.
and more had so much situational awareness to the room that he was walking into, and it was fully on display in week 1 against Green Bay.
No, I totally agree. I mean, the coordinators, for the first time in a long time, it feels like we're elevating even the star talent that you had on both sides of the ball. Stock up for me, Gino, to safety Reed Blankenship. 1 clutch interception late in a 1-score game, the 4th highest Pro Football Focus grade among 93 safeties graded week 1. I'm going to eat some crow. I did almost an entire podcast this summer about how I feel like Reed Blankenship has just been almost given a job, and when Sidney Brown comes back, maybe he's a better option. And I still believe in Sidney Brown and his upside. I'm not saying he can't be maybe your best safety eventually with his ceiling. But Reed Blankenship just comes in every single game, is just so reliable, solid, and he makes plays. Like, that interception came in such a massive spot when it felt like the defense was bleeding a little bit, like yards were being given up. He jumps that route perfectly, like the recognition, the hands to make sure he completed the catch on the ground. Reed Blankenship is somebody that, again, I'm not saying I've been out on, but I always thought he was going to be like a solid role player for this team, a really high-end third safety or a lower-end safety 2. But I don't know. I think I'm feeling pretty wrong about that after 1 game, and I'll happily eat crow. Like, he stepped up big time in a huge spot.
I want everybody that's listening to look at it like this. You remember that guy, TJ Edwards?
He feels like the TJ Edwards of safeties, yeah.
You did not appreciate him. You did not appreciate his ability to be on the field time and time again, his ability to make those plays when you needed him, his ability to be very good as a tackler and solid enough in coverage. And if Reed Blankenship were to not be on this team come tomorrow, I guarantee you would have the exact same reaction as you did with
You'd
TJ
feel the
Edwards.
effect. No,
I feel the effect. He's
totally
so smart. He's in the right spot. Outside of that blown coverage that was on multiple people, not just him, where he didn't carry Jaden Reed up to Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and deliver him into the high post, carrying that number 3 receiver. Outside of that, man, he's so good. And an undrafted free agent at that. This guy wasn't a first-round pick like Quinyon Mitchell. He wasn't a second-round pick like Cooper DeJean or Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who maybe had a little bit more talent than his 4th-round grade and 4th-round pick that he came out as. But, man, Middle Tennessee State, stand up, boys. That was a huge game, huge play for Reed Blankenship. You got to be all in on him, man. 32 is a player in this league.
All right, Gino, your next stock up is the Eagles' new starting right guard, Mekhi Becton. 0 pressures allowed in his debut at a brand new position. What a performance.
I think the pressures, or lack thereof, speak for themselves. But what he did in the run game, it was truly poetry in motion. Him, Cam Jurgens, Lane Johnson, all working in unison. If you go over to Next Gen Stats yet again, and you look at the direction of where Saquon Barkley rushed, he had the most success running between the tackles between Cam Jurgens and Lane Johnson. And
we said that was going to be a key. Yeah.
It was Mekhi Becton, man, and he got so much power off his initial set to just move guys off that line of scrimmage and dent guys off that line. That's where they had so much weakness last year, Lou. And maybe it comes down to playing with 2 guys undersized with Cam Jurgens and Jason Kelsey. And now you get back to that Brandon Brooks mold of this guy who does not look like 375 pounds or whatever the heck he is. But when he punches guys off the line of scrimmage like Baldy showed all day long on Twitter, he's a stud, man. Great find in Jeff Stoutland. I mean, great leadership in him coming into a building and saying, yeah, I'll play whatever position you need me to. And he comes in and he looks like one of the better right guards in all of football right now. Truly impressive performance from Mekhi Becton.
I'll never question Jeff Stoutland again, what he tries to do.
Ever.
It's unbelievable. And Cam Jurgens, shout out to the botched snap was on him in the first half, but I thought he really bounced back after that and really got going as a run blocker.
He's so good.
Cam Jurgens was really impressive too on Friday night. I'll say as well, stock up to, of course, the rookie cornerback Quinyon Mitchell, who I mentioned earlier. 3 pass breakups, a 66.9 passer rating allowed on 9 targets. So he was tested. He was covering Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs, Jaden Reed. I mean, that Packers team, Dontavius Wicks, they have a ton of receivers, and Quinyon held his own against all of them. I mean, the click and close, the vision, the ball skills. That was like, there's only been a few times, because the Eagles haven't been great drafters really over the years for a lot of the time I've been doing this podcast with you. But this felt like the Devontae Smith debut against Atlanta, Jalen Carter last year, where instantly, Gino, you're like, oh yeah, no, they nailed this pick. Mm-hmm. The minute this guy stepped foot on an NFL field, he was already one of the best players out there. And there's no doubt about it. Like that, you instantly felt that the minute he went toe-to-toe with Christian Watson on that streak in the first quarter. I'm like, yep, this guy, I've seen enough. I'm over the moon with how good Mitchell looked.
Yeah, you could basically watch that game and chart essentially every route on the tree that he defended, and he looked pretty good doing it all. And he looked good as a tackler. He looked good being in the spot that he needed to be. And you're asked to step up in a situation that he probably didn't think he was going to be in, with Isaiah Rodgers more than likely
he's been
the
playing
outside
slot,
starter,
learning a new position all summer, and
yeah, shout out to him. And I think a lot of it has to do with the guy that, I mean, we have to mention him as a stock up, but like Zach Bond calling that defense out, him into Kobe Dean. I think those guys, like, they're in another tier for stock up right now. But Quinyon Mitchell, man, dude, he could play. He could play man. He could play zone. He's fast. He's physical. He gets to the catch point. He breaks up footballs.
Yeah, so much for those concerns about him being able to play man coverage. I have no doubt about that.
Showed it in Mobile. Showed it down in Southern Hemisphere, my friend.
All right, Gino, your last stock up, yards after the catch, which was very apparent how much better that was this year than I would say last year.
Sao Paulo turned into Yak City for the Philadelphia Eagles, man. They had over 150 yards after the catch, according to Pro Football Focus. The majority of them came from A.J. Brown and just his freakish ability in the open field. That's like Derrick Henry being able to run at like 22 miles an hour.
He had the top speed of the week, right at 35. Fourth.
If he ran 35 miles an hour, he would be in the next Flash movie. No, he ran around.
It felt like it was something ridiculous.
21.05 miles an hour, which was the fastest
He's
since his
huge. That man should not be able to run that fast.
He's a freak of nature, and that's what Kellen Moore's motion-based offense is going to do. And some of it came on the designs from just moving guys around and taking advantage of guys vacating space. But at the same time, some of those big plays were just simple streaks. You just get off the line, or slants, excuse me. You said streak, and that was in my head, but just a simple slat. Put one foot in the ground, get into the space, get the ball in your hands, and go. It's simple sometimes, and the Eagles made it look simple when they were humming.
All right, stock down coming up next. Who struggled in that back-and-forth battle with Green Bay? We'll get into it as we wrap up this Monday edition of Locked On Eagles. This episode of Locked On Eagles is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks, it makes it easier to save more on not just sports, but concert tickets, comedy, and theater. On top of the great price, you're also going to make sure you're getting a great view. You'll get a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy your tickets. They also have their lowest price guarantee. Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you find tickets at a lower price on another platform. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create that account, redeem our code LOCKEDONNFL. You'll get $20 off your first tickets. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, time now for stock down, Gino, after a 34-29 win over Green Bay on Friday night. And I think we both agree with our first one, and it's slot corner Avante Maddox. And I thought overall this defense on the back end, normally this defense goes front to back. I actually thought the back end looked a lot better than the front, especially the edge rushers. But I will say the one guy that was the exception was Avante, and maybe some of it had to do with the field. He's been playing mostly safety this summer, but he's been playing slot corner for 7-8 years at this point. It's a tough matchup against Jaden Reed, but he did not hold his own at all.
The thing with Avante that I think it's a little out of his control is that there are so many shiny cars in the garage, and you're just
That's
like,
fair.
why couldn't we have gotten Keely Ringo out there for a snap or two, or like Eli Ricks, who played in moments last year and was pretty good as that slot corner for this team. And Avante Maddox, it's a tough situation to be put in as a player who has to move around that much, and you're really on an island a lot of the time. But when you're the lowest graded guy in the defensive backfield, according to Pro Football Focus, you go out there and watch the tape, the guy who got picked on, who was the clear target to throw at for Green Bay, it was evident that he was in trouble from the get-go in this game. And I just think there are some better options that you can at least try. And bringing Isaiah Rodgers back, I would not see Avante Maddox being on the football field come next Monday night.
No, I don't think so. Because even if, let's say, Quinyon Mitchell stays on the outside, I think Cooper DeJean will probably be in the slot. You do have Isaiah Rodgers. Maybe you try that now, or Quinyon goes inside and Ringo or Rodgers are on the outside too. So I agree. I like Avante Maddox more than most, but that was not a great game on Friday. Definitely didn't do him any favors. And people did not think heading into that game he'd be the slot guy. We thought it'd be Ringo on the outside with Quinyon on the inside, and maybe Fangio will lean towards that now more if it's not DeJean in the slot this week. I'd say stock down as well, Gino. You mentioned Isaiah Rodgers, the injured starters from Friday that missed the game. Isaiah Rodgers, Devin White, stock down because their replacements balled out. Quinyon Mitchell, as we saw, completely balled out. Nakobe Dean, Zach Bond, they looked great. I don't know. I think Devin White for sure is not coming back to a starting job next Monday night. Isaiah Rodgers maybe, depending on the matchup, but me and you both mentioned it on Friday night. I don't know. And again, maybe by matchup you'll move Mitchell inside and out, but I don't know how you keep Quinyon from being like the majority of the time an outside cornerback. He just looked so comfortable and so good there.
One of the biggest lies in sports is that you can't lose your job because of an injury.
Oh, you absolutely can.
It might not be your fault, but if somebody goes out there
Yeah.
and he perks up the eyebrows of your general manager and your personnel staff the way Zach Bond and Nakobe Dean did the other night, and the thing with Devin White, Lou, does he present any upside in coverage? No, he's probably the worst one out of all of them. He was in discussions to potentially be traded. When we were saying Ben Van Sumeren probably gives you better coverage ability right now than a guy like Devin White. Isaiah Rodgers, that hand injury, that one's not going to linger when it comes to his long speed and his short area quickness. But with Devin White, man, like that ankle injury, if you're a step slow compared to Zach Bond and Nakobe Dean, who looked really explosive, it's going to be so evident come next Monday night if they do put him onto the football field, where Fangio's not a guy who's going to see a couple snaps and say, okay, let's just leave him out there because we paid him this money. I don't think Vic Fangio cares what kind of money he got. He's going to put the two guys out there that looked pretty darn good the other night in Nakobe Dean and Zach Bond, who was your best player.
Gino, your other stock down, the offensive woes when it comes to turnovers, third down offense, definitely things that I think they have to correct. So I totally agree with you on this one.
Yeah, looking here, the Eagles were 4 of 14 on third down. That's bad. That's bad. It does not matter what situation, what continent you are in. You have to do a better job putting yourself in third and short situations that you can convert. Kellen Moore, I think he did a good job in the red zone. They went 3 of 6, 50%. That's pretty good in the National Football League. The ability to move the ball in a variety of different ways in the run game, in the pass game, looked very good. But the thing that killed them, Lou, they were not able to stay on the football field in some of those moments. You look at the last drive of the game when they could have closed it out. You don't convert in those situations, and you only get that field goal, which still allowed the Packers to potentially be in the game. Let's say they do convert north of 50%, Lou. How many more chances and times are they going to be in the red zone? And that's the thing. It's a negative, but it's also an area where you can just pinpoint. And Kellen Moore, who's shown that if he sees a weakness to an offense, or so far in one game, maybe he identifies that quickly and they do get set up for more success in terms of third down. Turnover, you're not going to win many games going -2 in the turnover difference.
Especially 2 in your own end zone.
2 from the quarterback. It cannot happen, man. The center quarterback communication, that'll get better as the season goes along. Jalen Hurts has to know he can't turn the ball over. But if the defense doesn't make a play, you're -3. And at the same time, the defense probably is going to make some more plays on the ball against some lesser quarterbacks going forward.
I'll say my final stock down, and Gino, you mentioned he made a couple nice hustle plays, but to pay this guy $17 million a year, you need more from Bryce Huff. And again, I want to reserve full extreme judgment because of how bad the conditions were. There was even a rep I was watching today where Huff slipped like 3 or 4 times. He just could not get up. And AJ Brown can say the field was fine. It wasn't. Everybody was slipping on both sides of the ball for both teams. But Bryce Huff had 0 pressures in his Eagles debut. And not only that, I'm less concerned about the pressure because that was the first time he didn't have a pressure in a single game since 2021. And I think that will come. The problem is, yet again, Bryce Huff is not a full-time player. He played less than 50% of the snaps. Brandon Graham played more. Nolan Smith played more. Nick Sirianni kind of just shoved that question off today in his press conference. But again, even if Bryce Huff is as good as he was last year with the Jets as a pass rusher, to pay him what they paid him to justify it, he needs to be on the field more on first and second down than he was. And it was only game 1, but you need more from that guy or else, $17 million is not a lot for an edge rusher, I would say nowadays for a prime player, Gino, of his talent, but it's still a good chunk of change for a third down pass rusher.
This one, I look at the Zach Bond situation and say, that's probably one of the moves they made where the personnel staff was not as high on the player, but the coach was like, oh, I can get this to work. Bryce Huff, that might be one where the personnel staff was in love with him, and Fangio's like, no, I can't play somebody who's this undersized as a full-time player.
That also isn't that fluent dropping back in coverage. So he's undersized, but he's also not the mover of a Jalix Hunter, Nolan Smith in space.
Still, take everything week 1 with a grain of salt.
No, I agree.
For the edge rusher, like we always go back to the Super Bowl, like Hassan Reddick looked like he never rushed the passer ever in his life. And you see that when he gets on a good football field, he'll be better. So hopefully against Kirk Cousins come next Monday night, you'll see more situations where Huff can get after the quarterback. But like you said, Lou, in terms of just overall snap count, like a guy you pay $18 million to at any position, you're saying, okay, give us 60 to 75% of the snaps in this game at minimum.
Because if you're paying him $12 million a year and Bryce Huff, who he was last year as a pass rusher, and he's just a third down guy, fine, that's a good investment. But you paid him to be more. And yes, you didn't pay him $20+ million a year, but you paid him to replace Hassan Reddick. You're trying the Reddick move again when you signed Hassan from Carolina. So he's got to be better. We'll see Monday night. I'm really excited about that matchup against the Atlanta Falcons. Gino, before we go, though, let's end things positively. Give me one underrated player from Friday's game, or somebody that we didn't say for stock up that you wanted to put in there.
I think Jordan Davis had one of his better games as a pro.
I like that one.
If I'm being honest, man. Like
he's a great player in the first half of the season, man. I'll tell you that.
I watched that all 22, and you go look at some of the next gen stats to back it up. You want to hear something crazy? He was like top 15 when it came to pass rush get off on the entire defensive line in the National Football League.
I saw that. Crazy.
His pass rush move looked a little more refined. He had a nice little swim, nice couple arm over, a couple 2-hand swipes. He looks active with his feet, active with his hands. He looks powerful. He looks trim. And against the run, Lou, the guy does not move. He might move a step or two, but his ability to anchor and re-anchor, even at 330 pounds, which is fighting weight for him compared to the 360, 365 he probably played the last couple years, this is the guy that you need to see week in and week out. And I don't think PFF graded him that highly. Same with Jalen Carter. But I think if you look at what those guys did affecting the pocket,
I thought Carter was a lot better than his grade.
Man. They were making those interior guys work for their money.
Jalen Carter had a good game in my opinion. So did Moro Ijoma. Same with, I would say, Milton Williams. Yeah. He stopped that 2-point conversion, which kept it a 5-point game instead of a 3-point game. I was happy with those guys. Gino, I'll say one more player too that his stock rose. Darius Slay. Like we were so excited about Quinyon Mitchell's debut, but Slay was barely targeted on that side of the ball. He still moves really well in space, and against a good receiver core, Slay looked like 2022 Darius Slay, at least for one game. And he had a couple big hits, too.
It was his words, not ours, that last year he was playing on a knee that was at 30%.
He looked a lot faster on Friday, for sure.
When he is healthy, he has some of the best feet you'll ever see at the cornerback position, and his ability to play physical. Lou, for him to play physical, he has to play fast. So if he's like deterred in any of his speed, that kind of hurts his physicality. And you saw that last year. But when he can fly around, there's a reason he's been one of the top corners in football for nearly a decade at this point.
Totally agree. So stock up to Darius Slay. I would say as well, stock up to, there's just so many players, like Cam Jurgens.
Game more than bad.
A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Yeah, I think I totally agree. That was a big win on Friday. We'll continue to recap it, move forward for Eagles Falcons this week. Still got 4 more shows for you right here on your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, Locked On Eagles. Thanks so much for making us your first listen each and every day. Go make sure your second listen is the Locked On NFL podcast. 2 shows a day now with Tyler Rowland and, of course, our guy Wiggs. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. Thanks so much for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles fly.